Don't search for a cure. Awaken your hidden strength. Analysis. A continuous journey of readjustment, not a definitive cure. Psychological analysis or therapy is not a magic bullet that solves everything once and for all. On the contrary, renowned psychologist Carl Jung teaches us that therapy is a continuous journey of readjustment. Life is a river that never stops flowing, and what works for you today may not be the best solution tomorrow. No adaptation is permanent, and therein lies the beauty and challenge of self-knowledge. Interestingly, this insight resonates deeply with the ancient teachings of Buddhism. Imagine learning to ride a bike. You practice, fall a few times, get up, and eventually become a skilled cyclist. However, with each new road, be it a steep climb, a fast descent, or a rocky path, you need to adjust your posture, your speed, and even the way you see the route. Therapy is very similar. It gives you the tools to ride a bike through life, but new challenges will always arise, requiring new skills and readjustments. Practical examples in daily life. Relapse after therapy. Consider someone who underwent therapy to deal with anxiety and made remarkable progress, feeling much better. Years later, this person faces a major life change, such as the arrival of a child, a radical career change, or the loss of a loved one. It's possible that feelings of anxiety will resurface. This doesn't mean the therapy failed. It means that life presented a new and significant challenge, which naturally calls for a new psychological readjustment. Previous therapy provided the foundation, but the new situation requires the application and refinement of these tools. Buddhist connection. In Buddhism, this is understood as the impermanence, or anicca, of experience. There is no fixed state of healing, because everything is constantly changing. Even after overcoming anxiety, new conditions, or karma, arise, requiring a new response. The practice of mindfulness meditation teaches us to observe the emergence of these feelings without clinging to them, recognizing that they are temporary and require new wisdom to deal with them in the present moment. The experienced athlete seeking a new coach. Consider a professional athlete who has won several championships and is recognized for his excellence. He is not cured of the need for improvement. On the contrary, he continues to seek new coaches, different training methods, and advanced technologies. He knows that to continue evolving, adapt to new competitors, and maintain his high level of performance, he needs new perspectives and techniques. The analysis goes like this: one is never cured of the process of growth and adaptation. Buddhist connection. This mirrors the continuous practice of the Dharma. A Buddhist practitioner, even after years of meditation and study, never stops learning and improving. There is always more to understand about the nature of the mind and reality. The search for new teachings and constant reflection on wisdom, prajna, are essential for spiritual evolution, just as an athlete seeks new knowledge to improve their performance. Professional reinvention. Imagine a successful executive who at 50 feels a deep emptiness despite all his achievements. He decides to abandon his corporate career to pursue an old passion, perhaps opening a small bookstore or dedicating himself to art. He may have solved the challenges of his first career, but life pushes him toward a new adaptation. This transition, even if by choice, can bring uncertainty and fear, and he may need psychological support to deal with this phase of reinvention. It is a clear example of how life demands continuous readjustments even when seeking new fulfillment. Buddhist connection. This reinvention is a practical example of detachment and the search for a path more aligned with one's life purpose, something fundamental in Buddhism. The doctrine of no self, or anatta, reminds us that our identity is not fixed, and we can reinvent ourselves and seek happiness in different forms of existence. The emptiness felt by the executive can be seen as a form of dukkha, or suffering, arising from impermanence and attachment to a professional identity that no longer serves. Transition is a way of seeking a more authentic, eightfold path. Jung emphasizes that difficulties are an essential part of human health. The problem is not having difficulties, but rather having too many of them or being unable to cope with them. The therapist's goal, therefore, is not just to eliminate the current problem, but to empower the patient to face future difficulties with a resilient spiritual and moral attitude. The transcendent function, uniting consciousness and unconsciousness. The key to this process of continuous readjustment lies in a fundamental Jungian idea, suppressing the separation between consciousness and the unconscious. This doesn't mean ignoring what is in your subconscious, but rather recognizing its immense importance. Our consciousness often acts unilaterally, focused on logic and what is visible. The unconscious, on the other hand, compensates for this one-sidedness, bringing intuitions, dreams, and feelings that guide us in different ways. The transcendent function arises from the union of these two tendencies, allowing an organic transition between different mental and emotional states, resulting in a more full and integrated life. Practical examples of integration. Integrating the sides of yourself. Consider a person who has always seen themselves as very rational. They pride themselves on their logic and analytical abilities, but repressed their emotions, considering them weaknesses. Through the development of the transcendent function, this person can begin to recognize the value of their feelings, learning to express them in a healthy way. Before, she acted solely on reason. Now she integrates emotion and reason, adopting a more complete and balanced attitude toward life. It's like learning to use not only the highest gear on a bicycle, but also the lowest gears for different terrains. Buddhist connection. Buddhism actively seeks this integration. Vipassana meditation, for example, aims to observe the totality of experience, thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations, without judgment, allowing consciousness and the unconscious to reveal and integrate. The goal is to develop penetrating vision, or vipassana, that perceives the interconnectedness of all mental phenomena, leading to a more balanced and less one-sided mind. More balanced decisions. Imagine a situation where you need to make an important decision, such as moving to a new city. If you used only your consciousness, you would make a list of logical pros and cons, cost of living, job opportunities, schools. But the transcendent function encourages you to go further. You would learn to pay attention to your intuition, to a bad feeling about one place, or a sense of deep well-being about another. By considering both logical data, conscious, and sensations and intuitions, unconscious, you make decisions that are more aligned with your wholeness, not just a part of you. Buddhist connection. In Buddhism, this reflects the concept of intuitive wisdom. While logic and reasoning are valued, there is a recognition of the depth of the enlightened mind that can intuit truth. The practice of developing compassion, or karuna, and loving kindness, or metta, for example, is not purely rational, but arises from an intuitive understanding of the interconnectedness of all beings, guiding decisions that benefit not only oneself, but also others. The therapist as the transcendent function. In therapy, the therapist, with their training and experience, often assumes the role of a transcendent function for the patient. They act as a bridge, helping the patient bridge the conscious and unconscious, facilitating the formation of a new, more integrated attitude toward life. This brings us to the crucial importance of transference in therapy. Transference is when the patient projects their hopes for renewal, healing, and change onto the therapist. While this dependence may at first glance seem childish, Jung explains that it reflects a deep human need for help in integrating unconscious aspects of the personality. Jung strongly criticizes the reductive view of transference, especially when it is interpreted merely as a childish fantasy of an erotic nature. He argues that, although its historical origins may be linked to infantile eros, basic desires and needs, the true meaning of transference lies in its purpose, the unconscious search for help, growth, and transformation. Reducing transference to mere infantile sexual fantasies leads to treatment stagnation and boredom for both the patient and the analyst, as the opportunity to understand the constructive potential and the drive for the future that these manifestations carry is lost. Practical examples of transference in therapy. Blind trust in the therapist. A patient may idealize the therapist, seeing them as the only one capable of solving all their problems, as if they had all the answers. This is not necessarily childish dependence in the pejorative sense, but rather a powerful manifestation of transference. The therapist in this context represents the figure who can help the patient integrate the fragmented parts of their unconscious. The therapist's job, then, is to act as the transcendent function, helping the patient internalize this capacity for union and self-knowledge rather than relying on it externally. The goal is for the patient to become their own internal therapist. Buddhist connection. In Buddhism, the relationship with the teacher, guru, or lama can have parallels with transference. The student may idealize the teacher, projecting wisdom and enlightenment onto them. However, the teacher's goal is precisely to guide the student to develop their own innate enlightenment, to awaken their own Buddha wisdom, and not to maintain dependence. The teacher acts as a noble spiritual friend, or Kalyana Mita, who points the way but encourages autonomy on the spiritual journey. Boredom in therapy. Imagine a therapist who insists on interpreting the patient's dreams or fantasies only in a reductive way. For example, the therapist often links dreams to past childhood events or childhood sexual desires without exploring what the dream is trying to communicate about the present and future. In this scenario, the patient may begin to feel bored, unmotivated, and even hopeless. This happens because the therapist is missing the opportunity to explore the meaning and constructive purpose that these dream symbols point to for the patient's future. Therapy becomes repetitive and directionless, as there is no room for the new, for the transcendent. Buddhist connection. In Buddhism, a practice that focuses only on the past, such as regretting mistakes or clinging to past experiences without seeking transformation for the future, can lead to stagnation. The practice of detachment and impermanence teaches us not to fixate on past states, but to observe the flow of experience and direct the mind toward liberation, or nirvana. An approach that ignores the mind's inherent potential for growth and transformation, or Buddha nature, would be seen as limiting, generating boredom and a lack of motivation. Symbols and meaning, beyond suggestion. Jung makes a crucial distinction between the constructive method and mere suggestion. He does not treat the symbol, like a dream image or fantasy, semiotically, that is, as a simple sign pointing to something elementary and already known, like a basic instinct. Instead, he sees it symbolically, as the best expression for a complex fact not yet fully understood by consciousness. Reductive analysis, which breaks down the symbol into its original elements, focusing on the past, may be useful for initial understanding, for clearing the ground. However, it fails to address the symbol's purpose, that is, what it is trying to show us about the future or the path to wholeness. The central question, therefore, is: what meaning do the patient's associations convey when viewed in connection with the manifest content of dreams? What is the unconscious trying to tell us now, and where is it guiding us? Practical example: the sword dream. A client dreams of a wonderful, ancient, richly ornamented sword unearthed from a tomb. Reductive associations. If the therapist focused solely on the client's father's dagger, an energetic, impetuous, and adventurous man, he or she might interpret the sword as a phallic symbol or a symbol of masculine aggression linked to the father figure. This would be a reductive analysis, focusing only on the past and the most basic and familiar elements. It's like looking at a bicycle and seeing only the metal and rubber, without understanding that it's for pedaling. Buddhist connection. A reductive approach would be like interpreting a mantra or mandala as merely a sound or a beautiful image, without considering the deep esoteric meaning and transformative power they represent. Constructive symbolic analysis. The Jungian therapist considering other associations the client makes, such as the Iron Age Celtic sword, the client's Celtic origins, the impetuous and passionate temperament of the Celts, the mysterious ornaments, ancient tradition, runes, ancestral wisdom, heritage of humanity, and the fact that it was brought from the tomb to the light of day, would seek the meaning and purpose of the symbol for the patient's present and future life. In this case, the sword is not just about the father or a sexual instinct. It symbolizes the awakening of a powerful and ancestral inner force in the patient, her Celtic heritage, her impetuousness and passion, which was buried in the unconscious, perhaps forgotten or repressed, and is now coming to light, ready to be integrated into her conscious life. The wealth and ornaments indicate that this energy is not raw or destructive, but rather an energy that contains wisdom, beauty, and transformative potential. The father may have been a gateway to the association, but the focus is not on the past history, but rather on how this energy manifests now and how the patient can integrate it to build a new, more authentic attitude in her life. This is the essence of the transcendent function in action, not just understanding the past, but building the future, integrating what comes from the unconscious for a fuller, more conscious, and purposeful life. How do you perceive the sword that may be buried in your own unconscious, waiting to be unearthed and bring new possibilities into your life? And how can Buddhist practices aid in this unearthing?